Many people believe that you have to be naturally charismatic in order to be influential. But influence, like money, is a game that can be won if you understand the rules and the strategies. In this video, I'm going to talk about how do you play the game of influence so that you can win the game. Now, when you think about a game, picture a board game. Every board game has a different landscape. So the landscape of board game are those different boards that you unfold. You take out of the box, you unfold it. Maybe you have some dice and cards. Maybe you have some figures that you move onto it. But the landscape is the board that you're moving the pieces across. So first of all, you got to understand the landscape. And then you have to understand the rules of the game so that it informs you of your strategy. So that's what we're going to talk about today in terms of the game of influence. First of all, the landscape of the game of influence. The landscape, when you understand it, you're going to see and appreciate that there are 4 levels of influence. This is the landscape. So let's go into the 4 levels of influence. But before we begin, let's talk about what is influence. Because you got to know what the outcome of the game is. Otherwise, how do you know you're winning if you don't understand influence? So let me offer you a very Dr. Gray's definition of influence. Influence is the art and the science of communicating your convictions so powerfully that other people will naturally change their behaviors and their decisions based on the convictions you have revealed. So that is influence. So when it comes to the game of influence, the landscape of it, in which you're going to formulate your strategies, there are 4 levels of value. The first level of value in influence is called personal presence. That's the first level of influence. Personal presence. So this means it starts from you. Influence starts from you. It starts from your inside. And understand that everything that you can produce as outcomes in your life starts from you on the inside. Influence is no different. Even in terms of income, the money you make, it starts from your inside. How you develop yourself for your purpose and therefore create value that you can put out in the world. So influence is like a game. Is similar to money as a game when you understand this as well. So your personal presence is everything to do with how you show up as somebody who is influential. And how you show up is made up of all of the things that make up who you are. So the first step is for you to understand who you are. This is your identity. And I love the word identity because did you know that the word identity is actually a compound word? A compound word is one word that's made up of 2 words. For example, bookkeeper is a compound word because it's made out of 2 words, book and keeper. Identity is also made up of 2 words, id and entity. So your identity is made up of your whole self, your ego, yourself, which is the id, and an entity, which is you, an independent individual that has capacity. That is an entity. So when you put the 2 together, you have identity. And your identity is who you are on a journey to who you're becoming. And your presence in the room is actually palpable. Is not just heard from what you say, it is felt from when you walk into the room. Have you ever noticed that influential individuals, you sense their presence? You can't help it. You know they're there. And sometimes that presence has an effect on you, right? There could be different effects. Sometimes someone who's influential, the effect they have on you is that you're intimidated by them. Sometimes the effect they have on you is that you're very motivated by them or inspired by them. Sometimes you are shaken by them. Your whole worldview is shaken by them. So this is the effect you can have on others through your personal presence. Now, you might be asking right now as you're listening to this, what's the difference between personal presence and executive presence? Here's the difference. Personal presence is the sum total of who you are as an identity and how you show up in your relationships. Executive presence is a subset of that in the workplace, in leadership contexts. That's the difference. So you do not have an executive presence until you first have a personal presence. And that's the first level of influence, is to be able to establish and develop your personal presence. The second level of influence is called problem understanding. So you go from personal presence to problem understanding. This one is really important because the world is made up of people. And you can't be influential unless it's in front of other people. You can't be influential in and of yourself. It's always in the context of other people. Now, sometimes it may be in leadership contexts. Sometimes it may be in a business context. Sometimes it could be in a competitive context. But it doesn't matter the context. It is your ability to be influential, to win at the influence game. So this is where it's important to understand the problem. So you might be asking, well, what problem? The problem of the people that you want to be influential in front of. The only reason why you are influential is because the people that experience you in those moments see you as someone influential. They experience your influence, and if done well, they desire more of it. They want to be closer to it. They want to be around it if done well. So then your ability to be influential in their life or in their teams or in their professional setting, your ability to be influential for them will depend primarily, first of all, on your ability to understand how you can serve them. Because you can't be influential to somebody unless you've helped them to do a thing, or you've helped them to see something they haven't seen before, or you've helped them to be able to achieve something they couldn't do on their own. Then you are influential. That's what I talked about earlier, the effect that you have on somebody. It's not enough just to show up and they sense that you have a strong presence. Does that make you influential? Maybe, but not as influential as you might like. The influence that you desire to have in your professional life starts from being able to solve an important problem for somebody. An important problem that is a priority for them and that you have a clear solution for. So this stems from your ability to seek to understand the problem even better than they can. Because the principle of human behavior is like this, and take notes if you're listening. The principle of human behavior is like this. If you can express their problem and you can articulate their problem better than they will automatically believe that you have the solution. They will automatically be open to hearing your solution. And therefore, you have an opportunity to become influential. Right? Because remember, influence is when the moment you have caused them to naturally change their behaviors to support your cause or to support your solution. That is when you know you have become influential. So the second level of influence is problem understanding. The third level of influence is solution creation. Now, you can stop there. You can start with understanding the problem and you can stop there and you can articulate the problem better than they can. And then therefore it builds trust. They resonate with you and you can stop there. You don't have to offer them the solution. But then you can understand that if you don't offer them the solution and all you offer is an understanding, that is a certain level of influence. But when you take it further, one step further, the third level of influence to solution creation, your influence has just gotten that much further, another step further, or another step deeper, if you will. So solution creation, what does that mean? It means that you are creating a valuable offer that you articulate in response to a mutual understanding of their problem. And that solution is aimed at solving the problem that you have just articulated, that they have agreed upon that indeed is the problem that they have, and hence the need that they want to fulfill. So then now this is your responsibility to genuinely want to serve the people you want to influence. That's the number one rule of influence is it is a position of service. Influence is not about value capture, right? I want to be influential. It's only for me. I want to capture that influence. It doesn't work that way. There must be a fair exchange. In order for me to be influential to you on my channel, for example, I need to help you to solve your problems. I need to be able to understand you from your standpoint, your experience, and your challenges. And I need to be able to offer something valuable from your opinion, not my opinion, that you deem to be valuable enough that you will continue to hear me, that you will continue to support my channel and support my content and so on, and to be able to sense the conviction I have when I teach it, right? So that's how influence works. Solution creation is the third level of influence. Now we're getting to the fourth level of influence. Can you guess what it is? If the first one is personal presence, The second one is problem understanding. The third level of influence is solution creation. Can you guess what the fourth one is? You got it. It's now value delivery. Deliver on the value that you promised. The solution itself that you created is the promise. I can help. First, I've demonstrated I understand your problem and I understand it deeply. So therefore, it builds trust. Then I've created a solution that's tailored to solve your problem, and I'm genuinely interested in you and helping you and serving you. So then I'm offering the solution. After I've honored it, after I've offered it, the next thing is I got to fulfill on my promises. You offer a solution, you fulfill on the promise of the solution. So that is value delivery. And I'm not just going to offer and fulfill on the promise. I'm going to fulfill on the promise in a way that you can see the value of how I'm fulfilling on it. You can see my level of conviction in how I'm feeling on the promises. And you can see my depth of interest in helping you to solve that problem. So this is genuine value delivery. So those are the 4 levels of influence. So now, after you understand the 4 levels of influence, let's now talk about the rules of the game. Rule number 1 of the influence game is stop playing defense. In a game, let's say a team game, you have offense and you have defense. Any one player on a team will rotate between offense and defense. Any team as a whole will rotate between offense and defense. And there's a time and place for being in offense, and there's a time and place for being in defense. But when it comes to the influence game, you got to stop playing defense. Because here's what defense looks like when you are in front of individuals or an audience you want to be influential in front of. Defense means that you're defending your position, that you're defending your beliefs, you're defending your framework, or you're defending your solution. That's what defense looks like. And what happens when you defend your position, it's easy to come across as defensive. And when we get defensive, for us, if you're the one that's defensive, it also opens the door and it's a lot easier to come at a place where now you're trying to convince them. I got to convince them to see things from my perspective. I got to convince them to see things my way. I got to convince them to say yes to the way I want to solve the problem. And convincing never feels good. Have you ever noticed that people hate to be convinced? And as soon as they sense that this person is trying to convince me, the shields go up, they lean out, and they already start to look away or walk away. Right? So it's not about being on the defense. Another way that people get defensive is that they start focusing on impossibilities and they start focusing on their limitations. Right? I can't do this. This is not going to work for me. Other people may be able to do it better, but I don't have as much charisma as so-and-so. I'm not as smart as they and so-and-so. So a lot of people, when they are playing the influence game, they focus on their limitations. Instead of focusing on your limitations, which puts you in defense, and now the only thing left to do is to defend, instead of focusing on your limitation, focus on your possibilities. What's possible for you? It opens your mind to a possibility mindset, and that is very important. When you have a possibility mindset, your mind is open to growth. Your mind is open to things that were not possible before that could be possible in the future, and this is what they call a growth mindset. The other way that people often play defense in the influence game when you're in front of people, oftentimes the mistake that people make is to really focus on their position, their argument, right? They focus on all their credentials, how much time they spent on it. And so the focus is in the wrong place. If you're defensive in that regard, you are making an argument about the product, about your solution, when the audience, your focus cannot be about that if you desire to be influential. If you desire to be influential, turn your focus away from your solution, away from your credibility, away from your reputation. Focus your attention away from that and focus your attention on them. Make it about them. Not about how much time you spent creating the solution, not about how much experience you bring into it, not about all the credentials you have and why you are the best person for it. Turn your focus away from that and just be there to serve. make it about them. So that's the rule number one. The first rule of the game is to stop playing defense. The second rule of the influence game is to create value first. Now, I understand that in leadership context, in business context, we desire to get something out of it, right? It's very common to talk about ROI or even ROTI, which is return on time invested, not just return on investment, but return on our time invested. And I understand that when you are in professional landscapes, in leadership landscapes, you desire to get something out of it, out of the influential relationship. It could be greater opportunities. It could be more compensation. It could be recognition for something. I understand. But this is where it's important to lead with value first. Deliver on your value before you ask for anything. And this is really important because timing is really important in an influential conversation. When you do make an ask, let's think of it this way. If you desire to make an ask, to ask for something, that is actually a withdrawal. If I ask something of you, basically, when you give what I ask, I'm making a withdrawal from you, just like a bank account. I'm making a withdrawal from the bank account. Now, if the bank account I'm making a withdrawal from, if there's no money in the bank account and I withdraw money, what happens? It's overdraft. And there's interest with overdraft. So if I haven't made any deposits first and I try to make a withdrawal, there's problems that can happen as a result of it. There's imbalance. That's not financially prudent. If I demand and I make an ask and I demand that of my audience without first making deposits, well, what is that? If you equivalent that to the bank, if I go into the bank and I said, well, I want to make a withdrawal, give me some money, but I haven't even opened a bank account and I haven't even put money in the bank, what does that constitute as? It constitutes as robbery, as theft. So the same thing is true here when you desire to become influential. The rule of the game is create value first, deliver value first. This is the second rule of influence, which means that before you ask for anything, before you make those withdrawals, we've got to make some deposits. And we have to make enough deposits over time so that it's fair exchange by the time you make an ask, by the time you make withdrawals. So this is create value first and become the person who can deliver value and create value first. This may require a really big mindset shift because it requires consistent, persistent endurance while you are delivering value, that you're trusting the process and you're having the prudence and the wisdom to know when you've delivered, when you've truly delivered on the value. So that's the second rule of influence. And the third rule of influence, the game of influence, is this: make it measurable. So many times I work with executives who set goals and they go out and achieve them. And then they work really hard towards those goals. And if they don't have metrics, it's really difficult to know if you're progressing or if you're doing what's working. And it's definitely really hard to know when you've arrived, when you have been successful. So that's why a lot of executives on the outside, when you look at them, they're super successful. By any metric, they would be super successful. But when you get to talk to them privately, they don't feel successful. They always feel like something missing. They always feel like they're not quite there yet. And that is a symptom of the problem of not making it measurable. It's really important to make it measurable. Now, when you talk about something like influence, the first thing you might think is, well, it's not really a quantitative thing. And I understand that. It may not seem that way at first, but I promise you that if you think about it more, that you will see where the metrics are. Make it measurable. Understand exactly how you will know that you are successful. Understand very specifically what progress you're making in the growth of your relationships. How are you going to measure that? How are you going to measure the growth of your influence? What does that look like? Make it measurable. And make it measurable in a way that the metrics that you are looking at, that you're measuring against, are meaningful to you and that they create fair exchange. So those are the 3 rules for the game of influence. And when you look at the 3 rules of the game and you look at the 4 levels of influence, let that inform you of what your strategy needs to be. If you're listening to this right now and you are an aspiring leader, you really desire to be an influential leader, but right now maybe you are a hired hand. Maybe you are an individual contributor maybe you are a manager, but you desire to have more influence in leadership. Then I invite you to work with me. Every single week, every single month, I train on these topics on how to have more influence, how to make more impact, and the exact steps on that success path. So look somewhere below the video in the link. Click that link. You can see what I have to offer there. And I trust that you are an intelligent individual who can make decisions on how to invest in yourself and invest in your career path. So it makes sense for you, then click the link below, explore that, and maybe we will work together on the inside. For more content like this, I recently recorded a video called How to Exude Executive Presence, and that's one of my more popular videos. So check that out. It's coming right up next, and I'll see you there.